I never meant for it to happen. But the moment David Parkar kissed me, everything changed. He was off limits. My best friend's older brother, the one I used to hide my diary from. But now his touch lingers like fire on my skin, and the secrets we share could tear everything apart. I told myself it was a mistake, until it happened again. And this time I didn't want to stop. Tap the like button, drop a comment telling me your favorite moment, and hit subscribe so you never miss another videos. He was my best friend's brother, but then he kissed me. I wish I could say it was just one of those fleeting, harmless moments. The kind that disappears like a dream when you wake up. But no, this was something else. This was electric. Forbidden. And it changed everything I thought I knew about myself and about him. My name is Charlotte, and I've always been the kind of woman who walks the straight line. I don't push boundaries, I don't gamble with hearts, and I certainly don't entertain the thought of falling for someone I shouldn't. Especially not someone like David Parkar, the older brother of my best friend, Grace. Grace and I had been inseparable since high school. We shared everything: locker combinations, lipstick shades, heartbreaks. Her home was like my second home. I practically grew up around her family, and that included David, who was always this quiet, slightly mysterious guy who kept mostly to himself. He was a few years older than us and never paid me any special attention. Not until that summer. Grace had invited me to spend a couple weeks at their family's lake house in upstate New York. I needed the break. Life in the city had been draining. Between work, the endless noise, and my recent breakup, I was overdue for a little peace. I imagined days on the dock, reading under the sun, laughing with Grace like we used to. What I didn't imagine was David being there too. He had just returned from a long photography project overseas. Apparently, he needed the break just as much as I did. When he greeted me at the door that first day, there was something different in the way he looked at me. Maybe it was in the way his eyes lingered a second too long. Or the slight curve in his smile that I'd never seen before. I felt it in my chest. A low flutter that caught me by surprise. We were polite at first. Casual. Civil. I told myself it was nothing. He was just being friendly. But that night, as Grace and I sat by the fire, sipping wine and catching up on everything we'd missed, I kept catching glimpses of him across the room. He was reading something, his expression focused, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. And more than once, I saw him glance up at me when he thought I wasn't looking. The tension started small. A brush of the hand as we passed each other in the hallway. A shared laugh over breakfast. But it grew. One night, I walked into the kitchen to grab water. It was late, nearly midnight. I wore one of Grace's oversized shirts and nothing else. I didn't think anyone would be awake. But he was there, standing by the window, the moonlight casting shadows across his face. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked, his voice low, intimate. I nodded, suddenly aware of how bare my legs were beneath the shirt. Just needed something cold. He reached into the fridge, pulled out a glass bottle of sparkling water and handed it to me. Our fingers touched. It was a second. Maybe less. But the way his eyes locked with mine, something shifted. My heart raced. I stepped back, suddenly breathless. "Good night," I whispered. "Night, Charlotte," he said, holding my gaze just a moment longer than necessary. The next few days were a slow build of glances, moments, quiet exchanges filled with meaning. Grace didn't seem to notice. She was caught up in planning some trip to Boston and dealing with a friend's relationship drama. But I noticed. I noticed everything. Especially the way my body responded to him. It was like being pulled by an invisible thread, tightening each time we were in the same room. One afternoon, Grace had to drive into town for some errands. She asked if I wanted to go, but I said no. I needed some alone time. Or so I thought. I stepped out onto the deck with a book and a pair of sunglasses, ready to relax. David was already there, shirtless, working on his camera gear. He looked up and gave me a half smile. "Didn't expect you to stay back," he said. "Needed some quiet," I replied, trying not to let my eyes wander over his chest. But I did. I couldn't help it. He was lean, sculpted, and had this effortless confidence that made my stomach flip. He walked over, the sun catching in his hair. "Can I sit?" I nodded. He sat close. Too close. Close enough that our knees touched. He smelled like cedarwood and salt. Masculine and clean. He glanced at my book. I used to love that one, he said, tapping the cover. You read this? I read a lot more than people assume. That made me smile. We talked about books, about life, about things I never thought I'd share with him. His voice was soothing and the way he listened made me feel seen. Really seen. At one point, a breeze picked up and a strand of hair flew across my face. He reached up and tucked it behind my ear. That simple gesture sent a thrill down my spine. I turned to thank him, but the words never came out. Because he was looking at me like he wanted to say something. Something he'd been holding back. And then, without asking, without warning, he leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't hurried. It wasn't soft either. It was intense, like he'd been holding it back for a long time. His lips moved against mine with heat and hunger, and I melted into it. For a moment, I forgot everything. Who he was, who I was supposed to be. I only felt him, his touch, his breath. When we pulled apart, both of us breathing hard, the silence was heavy. I'm sorry, he said, though his voice didn't sound sorry. I shouldn't have. I placed a finger on his lips, stopping him. Don't apologize. The next few days were a blur of stolen touches and shared secrets. We didn't talk about what we were doing. We didn't define it. But every time our eyes met, something unspoken passed between us. In the early morning, when the house was still quiet, I would find him on the dock, waiting. We'd sit close, too close. One morning, I felt his fingers graze mine, and before I knew it, I was in his arms, his lips brushing over my neck as the sun rose behind us. Every night after Grace had gone to bed, I'd hear a knock on my door. Not loud. Just a soft tap. I never said a word. I'd open the door and there he'd be. And we'd sit on the bed, inches apart, talking in whispers. Sometimes we kissed. Deep, slow, lingering kisses that left me aching in places I didn't even know could ache. But we never crossed that line. Not fully. It was like we were caught in this suspended place. Charged, dangerous, and intoxicating. But the guilt, it crept in slowly. I couldn't ignore it forever. Grace was my best friend. What would she think if she knew? What if this wasn't real? What if David was just caught up in the moment, in the thrill of something he shouldn't want? One night, as we sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, I turned to him. What are we doing, David? He looked at me, his eyes serious. I don't know. But I can't stop thinking about you. I don't want to. This could ruin things. He touched my face gently. Then let's not ruin it. Let's be careful. But don't ask me to stop feeling what I feel for you. He leaned in again, and this time the kiss was slower, deeper, almost reverent. It was like he was memorizing me piece by piece. That night we didn't just kiss. We held each other skin against skin, wrapped in the silence of the lake and the sound of each other's breathing. Nothing was rushed. Nothing was said. But everything was felt. The next morning I woke up alone. He had left before dawn. I sat up, the sheets still warm where he'd been, and my heart full of a strange, beautiful ache. Part of me knew this couldn't last forever. But another part hoped. Maybe. When Grace returned from her trip, things got complicated. David and I pulled back. We were careful not to leave any traces. But it was hard, pretending like I didn't feel something every time he walked into the room. Like my body didn't remember the way he'd touched me, the way his breath had sounded in the dark. I don't know how long we could have kept the secret. But one night, as Grace and I sat by the fire again, she turned to me and said, "You've been different lately. Happier. Glowing even. Is there someone?" I hesitated. My throat tightened. I didn't answer. She smiled, sipping her wine. "I hope whoever he is, he knows how lucky he is." And in that moment I knew. This thing with David, it wasn't just a summer fling. It was something deeper, something I never expected. He was my best friend's brother. But then he kissed me. And nothing was ever the same. Even now as I look back, I don't regret a single moment. Not the secret glances. Not the late night whispers. Not the first time I felt his lips on mine and knew I was in trouble. Because for once I let go of fear. I followed my heart. And it led me somewhere beautiful. Somewhere I never thought I'd be. In love. Completely. Unexpectedly. Unapologetically. With him. David Parkar. The man I was never supposed to fall for. But did. And even now, years later, I still remember the way he kissed me that first time. Like I was the only girl in the world. And maybe, just maybe, to him I was